Everyone loves a good ghost story. I know I do. I always love sharing them, which never used to be a habit of mine until I moved out of a house and into the 5th grade. Ever since we moved out of that house, I've had many experiences in my life. I'll start with a few. When I lived in this large gray house, starting in the 3rd grade, I had many things happen. I've seen shadows on the walls in my room, the television, the only source of light. My family and I had heard silverware clanging on the dining room table. My name has been said many times. I'd be alone in my room and sometimes alone in the whole house. And my name would be called over and over. I would always respond to the name, too. "What?" I'd say. "Zach." "What?" "Zach." "What?" Never did I ever get a good answer. Just my name over and over. I had a story told to me about the family that used to live in this house. The family had a 16-year-old son who died in a car accident. I think he became my imaginary friend. I couldn't see him, but I could only hear him call my name, Zach. We moved out of that house, all of us, my parents, my siblings, and I, and my friend. He moved with us too. We moved to another small town. My friend decided it was time that I saw him. Actually, he wanted all of us to see him, so we did. I would be in the basement and see him run up the stairs, an average height male wearing blue jeans with a white t-shirt. I never saw his face. I began to slowly fear him, however. I would walk into my room and find my dog staring at my bed, growling at nothing. "Sable, what are you growling at? There's nothing there." Sable would look at me and wag her tail and then would look back at the bed and walk towards me. She'd then follow me throughout the house. Sometimes she followed me all night. It was normal for her to crawl into my bed with me. She had a bedtime, 9 o'clock. She would wait for me until I crawled into bed around 9:30. I would wake up with a bruise or two and sometimes scratches. I figured it was because I rolled over in my sleep and hit my arm off a bookshelf. I moved the bookshelf later on, just to change the environment of my room so I didn't get so bored of it, and the bruises and scratches continued. On some nights, I'd be in bed with Sable and she'd wake up and sit very quickly and stare at my door, which was ajar. She'd growl and my room would get cold. The more she growled, the colder it got. I'd tell Sable to shush and she'd look at me. Then I'd look at the door because I can sense what she's growling at. My door would then slowly close itself, and the warm would get warmer. My mom would see a shadow looking like my brother, and she would ask him, thinking it is my brother, "Nathan, what are you doing? Hello? Hello, Nathan?" Okay, whatever. The shadow would just stare at my mom, and then walk off into the hallway. One night, my brother and I were in the basement and heard walking in my sister's room. We'd walk upstairs to find her bedroom door shut. My sister in her bed when we looked, and everything was normal. It wasn't normal, however, when I shut the door as I was leaving the room, to have it open back up again. I tested the door to make sure it wasn't just me not shutting the door all the way. Even with the door not shut all the way, it wouldn't swing open. In the kitchen, I woke up to the sound of silverware and dishes being thrown in the kitchen. I thought we were being robbed. I walked out into the kitchen ready to kick some butt, only to find everything as it was. I had 3 dogs, but Sable was the growler. Sable was a corgi. Jetta and Winnie were bulldog boxer mixes. Very chipper hyper dogs. It worried me when they looked frightened, and I'd walk into a room, normally my bedroom, and they would absolutely refuse to go into that room. I'd grab their collars and try to guide them into the room. When the family went grocery shopping and I'd stay at home, they'd either slip out of their collars and run, or they'd plant their feet and fight me pulling them. I don't know what or who my childhood friend is, but he slowly became a nightmare. Sad part is, no one believed me. They do now. There's a story for that too, but I would greatly appreciate opinions as to who this young man in my experiences is. All I know about him is he died in an accident. If he's the young man that I was told about. Also, for informational purpose, I'm 18 now. This all occurred between the ages of 8 and 16. Today is day 3. On day 1, Saturday, November 7th, 2015, I was riding my bike home from work when my problems all began to start. It was roughly 10 p.m. and I was in a hurry. I passed through some pretty scary places, and not as in high crime scary, but scary as in almost zero visibility scary. Now, I've been doing the same route for about 2 years, rain and shine, day or night, and have a perfect understanding of the entire surrounding area. As I'm passing through one of the darkest places on the way home, someone touched my side. I immediately knew it wasn't another person because 1, I was moving too fast for how long they had held, and 2, if I couldn't see them, I knew that they couldn't see me. It scared me enough that I decided to cross to the other side of the road. Not 10 minutes later, I don't even know when or how it happened, but my bike was flipped. I was under it, and there was a car coming only seconds away. I managed to get up and out of the way and continued on my way home, shaken but okay, with the odd feeling of being watched for the whole remainder of the way. Day 2, the next day, yesterday, Sunday, November 8th, I was on my way home again. This time, I made it all the way off the road where the previous incident had taken place. I was within home range and assumed that if anything were going to happen to me, it would have happened back on the road. No sooner than I had decided it was safe and I would make it home fine, I had another accident. It certainly wasn't as bad as the previous one, but it was still enough that in its own ways was just as dangerous. As I'm about to make a turn, my pedal gives away. And I mean literally gives out. To anyone who rides bikes, you know how strong pedals of a bike are. It's almost impossible to get them off under any circumstances, and I ride mine so frequently, I'm constantly maintaining it. I went over the handlebars and crashed down flat against my ribs. I literally could not move for about 10 minutes. I walked the remaining distance home. Upon getting home, I inspected my bike. The pedal arm had completely come off, and the sprocket had completely rotated opposite the turning direction of its axle, which is near impossible to do without proper tools. I tried to rotate it back, and shocker, it wouldn't budge. The part where the pedal arm had been locked melted. Today, I'm unsure what's going to happen, and no longer know what to do or expect. I feel as though this is only going to get worse until my birthday this Wednesday or longer. I have been on edge since the first day, but now I'm walking on eggshells. Is there any help or advice as to what I can do? I was watching my granddaughter at her house, and late that night, I thought I heard someone walking around upstairs. My 4-year-old granddaughter was asleep in her room and no one was upstairs. I went downstairs and heard footsteps, this time on the open staircase, but again, no one was there. I went upstairs to go to bed and left the upstairs bathroom light on in case my granddaughter got up in the night and went to bed. I pushed a box in front of my bedroom door after closing the door and went to bed. I woke up after hearing a noise and found my door open and the box pushed to the side of the door. I checked my granddaughter and she was asleep, and my daughter wasn't home yet. I shut the door and placed the box back in front of the door and went back to bed. I couldn't sleep and noticed the door slowly open as if someone was pushing it open. The box slid to the side where it was before, and then I felt something sit on the edge of the bed, near my feet. I yelled at it to get out of my room and it was suddenly gone. I went into the hall and turned on the light. The attic door was right across from the bedroom. The stairs were still there, but the attic had been closed off. That stairwell gave me the creeps. I had the strongest urge to shut the door, nail it shut, and hang a cross on the door. I couldn't sleep and waited for my daughter and her friends to come home. I told her about what had happened, and she told me that during the day they can hear people talking upstairs and walking around, but no one is ever there, and that it was happening even before the other side of the duplex was rented. She said it gets worse at night, and that the kitchen cabinet doors to the sink in the kitchen often bang shut like someone or something is slamming them. She also told me that when they first moved into the duplex, they didn't feel comfortable sleeping upstairs, and that my granddaughter would scream and cry if she had to sleep upstairs. I told her about the thing that happened with the door, and then sat on the bed, and she told me that happens nearly every night in her room. which is where I was sleeping that time. And sometimes it even shakes the bed while she's on it, until she yells at it to get out of her room. Whatever is in that duplex leaves my granddaughter alone, now, but seems to have centered its activity to my daughter's room, her bed, the attic stairs, and the downstairs kitchen. I do not feel comfortable with that thing and sense something very wrong with it. It seems dangerous to me and almost threatening. The attic draws my attention and feels wrong. A strong sense of wrong, yet I feel drawn to it. After being in that house overnight, I have had trouble sleeping, nightmares that I just can't totally recall. My daughter has lost her job and her car blew the head, leaving her with no transportation. I want her to move out, but right now, she is stuck there until she can find another job and can afford to move. From the very first day that I moved in, I saw the spirits walking the halls of this old funeral home. Back in time, this was one of Harlan's main funeral homes. My grandfather on my mom's side had gone through back here in the 1950s. Now it's an apartment building, and in August of 2011, I moved into one of the basement apartments. I have seen spirits many times in my life, in many different locations, but this old funeral has more of them than any other place I have ever experienced. I asked the maintenance manager if he had seen them. All the time, was his reply. I didn't know if he was serious or just joking, but it really didn't matter. You see and kind of enjoy having them around, especially if they're not doing anything serious. It's also true that they know who they can have fun with. Across the hall from me is another apartment. This apartment was, back in the funeral home days, the bleed-out room. Just a couple of years ago, there was a young lad living there who was being taunted by the spirits. He was taunted to the point where he tore out all of the suspended ceiling tiles and cut every electrical wire he could find, thinking that someone was playing a joke on him. He even went as far as to have the police come in with a bug detecting device, but nothing electronic was found. Needless to say, he doesn't live in that apartment anymore. The spirits that walk the halls would obviously come into my apartment, and I would see them on a regular basis. They weren't doing anything scary, but now and then they would move things while I was gone, or they would hide things from me, only to have these hidden things reappear in a place that I had already checked. One day, while on my cell phone, I was sitting at my high table, when all of a sudden, a glider chair from 3 feet away from me started to glide back and forth, on its own. I just smiled and calmly said, "Just wait until I get off the phone, you SOB." The chair stopped immediately. It is in my belief they do these things in order to scare the hell out of you, and if they do scare you, then, in cases where multiple spirits exist, they all come at you and taunt you, to the point where you leave their house. But I don't scare that easily. Like I said, I have plenty of experience in this subject. All of it comes from personal experiences. Spirits can be driven out, or if they don't really bother you, they can just be considered one of the family. One thing you should understand, though, is that spirits, for the most part, are not just the souls of people who have died. Sure, once in a while a loved one might come back and let us know that they're okay, like in a dream or for a short visit for the purpose of letting us know that they're fine. But in cases with constant presence, there is something totally different going on. Most hauntings are the result of having ceremonies which conjure up these spirits. In the case of haunted funeral homes, there were ceremonies held in the bleed-out rooms with the corpses of those who passed away. This is why the bleed-out room in every old funeral home will contain a high number of spirits. The same goes for haunted houses, for the most part. There were ceremonies held in these houses, in the past, that conjured up these spirits. These homeowners died, but the spirits stayed. And that is what you're seeing in your home, your workplace, the cemetery, and other places that are haunted. The worst thing you can do with a spirit is show them fear. If you have an ornery spirit, then they will play on this fear. Not all spirits are ornery or mean, but either way, be bold to them. Now, if you have an actual poltergeist, then what I would do, run like hell. My family and I went to the Villisca Axe murder house in Villisca, Iowa this past weekend. It's a small house, quiet but creepy. It's very sad what happened in the house. 8 people, 2 adults and 6 children, were brutally murdered, hit with an axe in the house. When you walk in, you can just feel the sadness. The tour starts in the town museum, then the cemetery where you see the family, and their 2 overnight guests were buried. And then you finally go to the house. When we walked in, I immediately felt sad. The tour guide took us to the living room and told us the terrible story. The killer supposedly hid in the attic until the family went to sleep that night. When the tour guide was talking, I saw a shadow that looked like a woman standing in the kitchen looking at us. Before the tour guide left, he told us we can look around by ourselves. My mom's boyfriend, Jeff, went outside to look at something for a few minutes. After he did, we stayed hearing footsteps upstairs. I also heard what sounded like a lady moaning. My younger sister ran out of the house, and a few seconds later came back in with Jeff, and he asked what happened. We told him, so we decided to go upstairs and check it out. While up there, we went into the children's room. We stayed in there for a few minutes and nothing happened. My mom and Jeff decided to go into the attic where the killer supposedly hid. My sisters ran down the stairs and out the back door because they didn't want to be in there anymore. We were in the attic and I started hearing children whispering. It sounded like a little girl and a little boy. My mom looked at me and asked what was wrong, and I told her. So we went back into the children's room. I started asking questions like what their names were, and the little boy told me his name was Paul. I heard that the children liked to play with the toy balls, so my mom got a big pink one and started rolling it. Paul wouldn't roll it back, so we thought that maybe it was because it was pink and he was a little boy and didn't like it. My mom went back into the attic to try to find another one, when all of a sudden, a blue and pink ball rolled out from under one of the beds. She came back into the room and she stared at it. I picked it up and rolled it to her. She rolled it into one of the corners. Paul rolled the pink ball back to my feet where the blue and pink one was. I rolled the blue and the pink one back to my mom, and the pink one went into the middle of the floor. Jeff tried to see if maybe the floors were curved and that was what was making it roll. He jumped and the pink ball would not move. By then, Paul had gotten tired of playing with us and left the house. It's extremely sad what happened there, and I hope to come back soon. There's something in that house, both good and evil. I hope you ghouls enjoyed this video, and for the handful of you who come the second I upload a video, which there's a good chunk of you guys who do, I started my real estate training because I am now legally a real estate licensee. I can sell houses. My training just so happens to be on the day and time that I use to record my Friday video. So, yeah, I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to manage my time better so I can properly get Friday's video out on time. But yeah, so the secret word will be real estate. How's that? Try to think of a clever way to use that in the comments. But yeah, as always, my last video will be on the top left. My next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.